Elmer McCurder's story is not your usual tale of outlaw life in the Wild West. In fact, his death and what followed became one of the strangest stories in American history. Born in 1880, Elmer McCurdy lived a life filled with petty crime and small-time outlaw antics. He wasn't the most dangerous criminal out there, but he dreamed of making a name for himself. In 1911, he attempted a train robbery, a classic Wild West crime. The plan was simple: rob the train, grab the cash, and disappear. But this robbery didn't go as planned. The train was carrying very little money, just a few dollars and some whiskey. Not exactly the jackpot McCurdy had hoped for. During the robbery, a gunfight broke out between McCurdy and law enforcement. Elmer was shot and killed in the shootout. That's where most stories end. But for Elmer McCurdy, the story was just beginning. After he died, an undertaker named Arthur McCall took custody of his body. McCall was interested in the embalming process itself, a somewhat new practice at the time. He embalmed McCurder's body using a technique that unfortunately dried it out. The result was a stiff, mummified corpse, preserved in a strange and unnatural way. Instead of burying him properly, McCall decided to keep the body. Soon, McCurder's corpse became a curiosity, a sideshow attraction. After the embalming, Arthur McCall didn't bury Elmer McCurder's body. Instead, he displayed it at his funeral parlor. People came to see the stiff, strange-looking corpse of the outlaw. Some thought it was a wax figure or a prop. No one realized it was a real dead man. Soon, McCall decided to sell the body. It was bought by a carnival promoter, and the corpse became part of a traveling show. They called it the Bandit Who Wouldn't Die. Elmer's body toured across towns and cities. It was locked in a glass coffin, dressed in his outlaw clothes. Elmer McCurder's mummified corpse traveled with carnivals and sideshows. He became a legend, but not for his crimes. He was famous for still being alive long after death. People paid to see him, thinking he was a clever wax statue. The truth was far stranger. The body was moved from show to show for over 60 years. It was even stolen and recovered several times. At one point, it was used as a prop in a TV show. Crew members were shocked to learn the wax figure was actually a dead outlaw. In 1976, the secret finally came out. During filming of a TV show, someone discovered a bullet hole in the corpse. They realized this was no wax figure. It was Elmer McCurdy. His remains were finally identified and given a proper burial. After all those years on the road, he was laid to rest. Elmer McCurder's story is a strange reminder. Sometimes death isn't the end of embarrassment. It can be the start of something even weirder. Blackjack Ketchum was a notorious outlaw of the Wild West. He made a name for himself, robbing trains across New Mexico and surrounding states. Unlike some criminals who tried to avoid attention, Ketchum seemed to enjoy the danger and the reputation. His real name was Thomas Ketchum, but everyone called him Blackjack. He had a long history of crime. He was involved in several train robberies and shootouts with lawmen. In 1901, after years on the run, Blackjack was finally caught. The law was determined to make an example of him. He was charged with train robbery and sentenced to hang. The execution was set in Clayton, New Mexico territory. A crowd gathered to witness the hanging, as public executions often attracted many people back then. Everyone was curious to see the notorious outlaw meet his fate. On the day of the execution, the hangman prepared the gallows carefully, or so they thought. The plan was to use the long drop method. This method involves calculating the prisoner's weight and height. The goal is to break the neck quickly and cause instant death. But the hangman made a terrible mistake. He misjudged Blackjack Ketchum's weight. The drop was much longer than it should have been. When the trapdoor opened, Ketchum fell too far. The force was so great that the rope snapped his neck violently. But that wasn't all. The rope actually decapitated him. Blackjack's head came off completely. It flew into the air, landing near the gallows. The shocked crowd gasped in horror. It was an execution no one expected. Public executions were meant to be serious and solemn, but this one turned into a gruesome spectacle. The sight of the outlaw's head rolling on the ground shocked the witnesses. Many were too stunned to react. Some fainted. The executioner quickly tried to compose himself. He gathered Blackjack's head and body. Despite the horror, the execution was declared complete. After the shocking execution, Blackjack Ketchum's body was taken down from the gallows. The crowd slowly dispersed, still murmuring about what they had just witnessed. Stories about the headless outlaw spread quickly through the towns nearby. Newspapers reported on the grisly accident. Some wrote that the execution was botched, while others debated whether it was a form of divine punishment. For Blackjack Ketchum, the embarrassment didn't end with death. His decapitation became a strange kind of legend. Instead of being remembered only as a criminal, he became known as the outlaw who lost his head, literally. The executioner was never able to escape the shadow of that day. Many questioned his skill and professionalism. Some even said the poor execution was a punishment for the hangman himself. Blackjack's head was buried with the rest of his body, but the story lived on. It was told in saloons, campfires, and on dusty streets for years to come. People would joke about the dangers of hanging, especially when the rope was too long. And Blackjack Ketchum's name was forever linked with the most embarrassing execution in Wild West history. Though his life was full of crime and danger, his death was unforgettable. For all the wrong reasons, Slim Jim was not a gunslinger. He was not a train robber. He was a gambler. Thin as a fence post, dressed in dusty black, he was known for his quiet voice and dangerous grin. He drifted from one Wild West town to another, living off poker pots and cheap whiskey. He was a master of bluffing, a man who could lie without blinking. His whole life was a game of pretending. One night in Deadwood, in a crowded saloon filled with smoke and shouting, Slim Jim sat at a poker table. His eyes were on a rough-looking rancher, a stranger with calloused hands and a face that did not flinch. The pot was high, gold coins and folded bills in the center. Slim Jim held nothing, but he smiled. He pushed his chips forward, then slowly reached for his revolver, not to fire, just to tap it on the table. A favorite trick, theatrical and threatening. It made weak men fold every time. But that night, something went wrong. Slim Jim gripped his revolver. His hand was slick with sweat. He meant to pull it slow, just enough to make a statement. But the pistol slipped. He tried to catch it. His finger caught the trigger. One shot cracked through the room. The saloon went silent. Cards froze in midair. A piano key hung in the air without sound. Slim Jim staggered backward. The bullet hit his stomach. He fell, knocking over a chair. Blood bloomed through his vest. People thought it was part of the act, but then came the groan, soft and painful, and the spreading red. Someone ran for the town doctor, but there was no time left. He lay on the floor, face pale, eyes still open. Whiskey glass shattered beside him. Cards and coins scattered like dust. They say he whispered his last words, soft enough for only one man to hear. should have folded. That was the end of Slim Jim, the man who died bluffing with a gun. From Dodge to Tombstone, they told his story, not as a warning about gambling, but about pride, about sweat, about the cost of turning a card to cool dot. Clement Vallandigham was a man of words. He was not a cowboy or an outlaw. He was a lawyer, sharp-minded, calm-voiced, respected in courtrooms across the country. He lived in the late 1800s, long after the Wild West had begun to cool. But his story still found its place in Western legend because of the strange and tragic way he died. It started with a murder case. A man was accused of shooting another during a fight. Vallandigham believed the man was innocent. He said the victim had shot himself by accident while pulling his pistol from his pocket. The court was full. The jury watched him closely. Every word he spoke was calm and clear. But words alone were not enough. Vallandigham wanted to prove it, so in the quiet of his hotel room, the night before closing arguments, he reached for a pistol, the same type of weapon used in the case. He stood before a mirror, practicing how to show the jury what had really happened. He tucked the gun in his waistband, just like he believed the victim had done. Then he reached to draw it quickly to show how the angle would make the gun fire upward into the body. But the gun was loaded. The shot echoed through the quiet hotel room. The mirror cracked. Clement Vallandigham staggered back. The pistol slipped from his hand. He had proven his theory, but at a terrible cost. The bullet struck his abdomen, just as he claimed had happened in the case, just as he said the victim had done. He collapsed into a chair, alone, bleeding. No one came for several minutes. By the time help arrived, the damage was done. Doctors tried to save him, but the wound was too deep, too fast, too final. He died within hours, still firm in his belief that the defendant was innocent. And he was right. The jury accepted his theory. The accused man was found not guilty. Clement had won the case, but he had also written his own ending. News spread quickly. A lawyer had died proving his own argument. People called it heroic. Some called it foolish. But no one forgot it. His grave rests quiet, but his story lives on. Billy the Kid was born Henry McCarty, a young man who became one of the most famous outlaws of the American West. His life was filled with adventure, danger, and daring escapes. He was known for being quick with a gun, clever, and able to slip away from trouble many times. But despite all his skill, luck, and bravery, his story ended in a quiet, unexpected way. On a warm summer night in 1881, in the town of Fort Sumner, New Mexico, Billy was hiding out after many years of running from the law. Sheriff Pat Garrett had been tracking Billy for months, hoping to finally catch the outlaw who would become a legend. Garrett knew Billy well and had even once called him a friend. But that night, Garrett was determined to bring an end to the chase. Billy tried to sneak into a house in the dark. He thought it was a safe place to rest. But there was a secret password that everyone in Garrett's posse had agreed on to recognize friends. When Billy entered, he forgot the code word. He spoke quietly, asking, "Who is it?" in Spanish. His voice gave him away. Sheriff Garrett was already waiting, hidden in the shadows. When he heard Billy's voice, he realized who had come inside. Without hesitation, Garrett reached for his gun and fired. Billy was struck and fell to the floor. In that moment, the young outlaw's long and wild life ended quietly and suddenly. It was a strange and simple way for a man who had lived through so many dangerous moments to die. A forgotten password, A moment of hesitation, and the legend of Billy the Kid was over. People still remember him today, not just as an outlaw, but as a symbol of a time when the Wild West was full of mystery and adventure. Billy's story reminds us that even the cleverest people can be stopped by the smallest mistake. It also shows how sometimes fate works in surprising ways. The great outlaw met his end, not in a great battle or shootout, but because of a forgotten secret word. Asterisk, John Wesley Hardin was one of the deadliest gunmen in the West, known for his quick temper and quicker draw. Over his violent life, he claimed to have killed 27 men, though some accounts suggest the actual number was between 12 and over 20. After serving time in prison, he returned to the West, where his violent past continued to haunt him. Asterisk, in August 1895, Hardin found himself in El Paso, Texas, where he had a run-in with John Selman Jr., a constable who had arrested Hardin's girlfriend for carrying a firearm in public. Hardin confronted Selman Jr., and the two exchanged heated words. Some reports suggest that Hardin pistol-whipped Selman Jr., escalating the tension between them. Asterisk, later that day, Hardin entered the Acme Saloon, a popular establishment in El Paso. While standing at the bar, he was approached from behind by John Selman Sr., a former lawman with whom Hardin had a long-standing feud. Without warning, Selman Sr. shot Hardin in the back of the head, killing him instantly as Hardin lay on the floor. Selman fired 3 more shots into his body to ensure he was dead. Asterisk, Selman Sr. was arrested and charged with murder. During his trial, he claimed self-defense, stating that he saw Hardin reaching for his gun as he entered the saloon. The jury deliberated, but could not reach a unanimous decision, resulting in a hung jury before a retrial could take place. Selman was killed in a shootout with U.S. Marshal George Scarborough in April 1896. Asterisk. Hardin's death marked the end of a notorious career. He was buried the following day in Concordia Cemetery in El Paso, Texas. His life and death became the stuff of legend in the Old West, a testament to the violent and unpredictable nature of frontier justice. Asterisk. Tom Blackjack Logan was a notorious outlaw and a key member of the High Fives gang, a ruthless band known for their brazen train robberies and daring escapades across the rugged Southwest. The gang's name came from their signature 5-fingered handprint left at robbery scenes, a chilling calling card that terrified townsfolk and lawmen alike. Logan, known for his dark hair and sharp eyes, earned the nickname Blackjack for his quick temper and fierce loyalty to the gang. But even loyalty couldn't save him one fateful night in 1889. After a botched robbery, the gang was scattered and desperate, hiding out in a remote camp deep in the desert. The air was thick with tension. Every rustle of brush or distant sound was a potential threat. Law enforcement was closing in, and the outlaws were nervous, eyes constantly scanning the darkness. Tom Logan, trying to slip back quietly after scouting for supplies, approached the camp cautiously. The moon was low, shadows stretching long over the dusty ground. In the confusion and fear, no one could afford to take chances. The gang members on watch, tense and jumpy, spotted a figure moving toward them, mistaking Logan for an enemy, perhaps a lawman coming to arrest or ambush them. They acted before thinking. Without any warning or shout, shots rang out in the still night. Logan was hit multiple times, bullets tearing into his body. The man who had fought side by side with them now lay bleeding on the ground, a tragic victim of mistaken identity. His own comrades, driven by fear and poor communication, had turned their guns on him. This brutal accident exposed the dangerous paranoia that often surrounded outlaw life. In the lawless frontier, mistrust could be deadly, even within close-knit gangs. The High Fives gang, feared for their bold crimes, were vulnerable to the chaos that tension and fear could create. Tom Logan's death was not the result of a heroic gunfight, but a tragic error, one that haunted those who survived him. Logan's shooting was a grim reminder that in the Old West, danger wasn't just from enemies, but also from within. For outlaws who lived by the gun, survival depended on trust, quick decisions, and clear communication. Any failure could mean a fatal mistake. The tale of Tom "Blackjack" Logan ends as a cautionary story about how even the fiercest loyalty can be shattered by fear, turning allies into accidental killers.